welcome to another episode of XenoChat. I am one of the hosts, Tyler, along with the co-host, Justin.
What's up, XenoFam, and welcome back to another episode.
The returning guests are Mary.
Hello.
And we also have Blue joining us again.
Konnichiwa, minasan.
And we also have Owen.
Hello, hello, hello.
Long time no see.
Yes.
Indeed.
Welcome back. I think the last episode you were on was the Shulk episode, if I'm
Yeah,
not mistaken.
And
Yeah,
then
that sounds about right.
And then high school got crazy.
Well, this is good timing, because today's episode is all about Xenoblade and how much we love it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because, well, this goes into our news, but by the time this episode is up, Xenoblade Definitive Edition should be available, and we should all be enjoying it.
Yeah, y'all better have bought it.
You all. I will be waiting for my European edition.
Unless you're Owen and you're cool and got that version.
Oh my god,
which
that
we
version
should have gotten as well. But
so
apparently
jealous.
Nintendo thinks that Americans don't want it.
We just deserve the art book, which I'm excited about the art book. But
Yeah, the art book is going to be really nice. That does look really good. Even though I do kind of wish that we got the soundtrack that Japan got as well.
Yeah, the soundtrack would have been great. I'm happy about the art book though, because I'm always about art books, but at the same time, I would have loved to have a soundtrack with it.
If people are interested, according to my friend, the Japanese special edition, they're selling the parts individually from like the Nintendo Japan website. So if you want that stuff, you can get it.
Oh, that's
really?
actually pretty good.
That's
Yeah.
cool.
that's neat. Oh, didn't they also... Because I think you posted this the other day, Justin. They're also... doesn't Ami Ami have some merch?
Yes. Ami Ami has a whole bunch of Xenoblade merch. I found that out like 2 days ago. It was just the other day that I found that out. And yeah, a lot of people are pumped about it because I posted on Twitter and then that tweet like blew up. But yeah, there's a whole bunch of Xenoblade 1 goodies that are up for pre-order on Ami Ami right now. Like they have a bunch of character keychains and charms.
Yeah, I saw them. They were cool.
It's like,
And they
finally.
had that one metallic Monado. Like, I don't know, is that a keychain or is it a necklace?
I think they're all keychains, but
I
I'm
think
not
they're
sure.
all keychains, yeah.
Yeah, that's a keychain.
It's just, there's one of the Monado that was a bit bigger. And
That's the one I'm looking
a bit
at right
more
now.
fancy. And that one is
Mhm.
super expensive. But the other one is actually, I think, a set of gacha chibi Monados that are a bit cheaper. Because it's like, basically, the old Japan, I think you buy the whole box containing all of the different symbols.
Hmm.
But I don't think you can buy the tiny ones separated from what I've seen. Like, I think it's really the box that you buy. But generally, you save a lot of money by doing that because you usually get the whole set if you buy a box of gacha.
I mean,
Usually.
if you get the small one, you can make Lin hair clips.
There we go. Hope with the Lin cosplay.
What's kind of nice is that if you buy like those sets on Ami Ami, you'll get like the box that they ship in, like the same box that you'll see at stores.
Yeah, that's what I meant. Like, it's the full box. It's not like the separated thing. Although the character ones, I think those were singular. They didn't seem to have a box, so these seem to be sold only like separated.
I honestly don't know too much about it, but
What
Yeah,
is kind of nice, hold on, just to show you how popular this is getting. So, if I go on to Ami Ami in the rankings, so those little Monados, like the gacha ones, that
Mhm.
is number 1 in trading figures right now.
Oh.
And here's a ranking for character goods. So, those Xenoblade keychains are like dominating the character goods list right now for the top 10.
Hmm.
Yeah, they are.
Number 1 is the Monado that we were talking about, and then numbers 2 through 8 are the character the character keychains. So, who wants to bet what number 2 is, or I guess the highest ranked one?
I don't know. Melia?
It is in fact Melia.
Have to-
It goes
Oh,
Melia,
yeah.
then Shulk, then Fiora, then Sharla,
Of course.
then Rhine,
Oh.
then Dunban, and last is Ricky.
Oh,
They
Ricky.
screwed my boy over.
Oh,
Poor Ricky, he's his mascot though. He should be higher.
Yeah, he can be a pineapple in the new game.
That pineapple costume, I saw it. It's so hilarious.
So you know what you need to do, Xenofan? You all got to go to Ami right now. Hit up that Ricky keychain and hit pre-order. Well, actually, it would probably be out by the time this comes up. So buy that Ricky keychain if it's still up. Bring him up in the ranking.
It says it's coming out late June 2020, so it might not be out yet.
All right, perfect.
Yeah.
So yeah, go on to Ami. Hit up those keychains. They look great. I actually want to pre-order a couple of them myself. Because they just look awesome.
I may need to get the Monado.
Yeah, I definitely want the Monado at the very least, and probably the Melia one. I am all for Xenoblade merch. Like that's why I was so excited when I saw this come up because I was just like, oh my goodness, Nintendo's actually giving us merch.
We're finally getting merch.
and we've spoken about this on a podcast before about how they need to give us merch. So it's finally happening.
They're listening.
Yeah.
Does anyone find it interesting how, like, of like the original releases of the Xenoblade games, Xenoblade 1 got the least amount? Like, Xenoblade X got, like, the scale models. Yeah. The scale models. And, like, Xenoblade 2 got frickin' everything. And now, like, they're finally bringing out Xenoblade 1 stuff.
Xenoblade 2 only got super expensive figurines.
Yeah, very limited
It did
ones.
not really get small things. What we were hoping for was for them to release some type of, like, smaller type of goodies, just for the fun of it, because it's more affordable. People can actually enjoy those merchandise.
If anything,
well,
Xenoblade 2 was, like, made for gacha.
Yeah, I don't understand why they did not make any, like, gacha box of Xenoblade 2 yet. I'm just like, oh, guys, you're missing out on this. You should have made something with gacha. Like, at least maybe some chibi figurines or something that they sell in the gacha boxes.
I mean, they have all those different rare blades that they could have.
That's what I'm saying.
They could make different series too. Like, they could make multiple series and people would totally buy them.
I know I would.
Oh yeah, I would definitely pre-order, like, the whole box sets.
But yeah, that was probably the biggest surprise in terms of Xenoblade news, is just seeing some merch finally come out. So that's pretty cool. And hopefully this sells pretty well. I think it is going to do fairly well. Xenoblade fans are nuts. Yeah. They will buy any of this stuff. Because, like, even Xenoblade 2, like, the Pyra and Mythra figure, those sold out during their initial print run and ended up going for a ton of money. And they were bootlegged to high hell. And, I mean, now I think they're still up for pre-order. Pretty sure.
Yeah, but I don't know if they're full yet or not.
I don't think they are.
I know Cosmos is full. It's been for some time now. But also the other news.
Bad news, yeah.
Cosmos has been delayed, though I was expecting it, honestly. But yeah, she's been delayed to July. We'll see if it's gonna really come by July or be delayed again. But
oh wait, nope.
It's also a very detailed figurine, so...
Pre-orders are closed for both Pyra and Mythra on Ami at least.
That means they're full.
Yep.
I'm glad I got my Pyra figure when I did.
But to think, this is the second run, and their pre-orders are full.
Mm-hmm.
To be fair,
that
shows
really nice that they should really do more merchandise with Xeno.
I think they're gonna do a Melia one. Depending on, like, how popular this is, I could definitely see a Melia statue coming.
I can
I
totally
would
see
totally
that.
Order Melia because she's really cool.
I've said before, she's one of my favorite characters. I would be all over that.
You know what I want?
Hmm?
I want Metal Face as a figure.
That'd be cool.
that would be
cool. That would be really cool.
Maybe it could be a mech kit.
I guess that'd be a nice little kit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's the merch news. Anybody want to comment on the actual game news? Because over the last few weeks, like, so much stuff's been released on Twitter regarding Definitive Edition. It's, like, insane.
I'll be honest, like, I've watched bits and pieces of things here and there, but, like, overall, I kind of try to get myself a bit cleaner of the actual footage. Because Like, I did check like one of the video that was showing some of the battle system though, because I was curious to see if they made changes or anything to the battle system, but it seems like it's pretty much the same thing, just kind of smoothed out. Like, I don't think they really had it that much stuff, but we'll see when it releases.
I know
Yeah,
at least
I'm not.
I know at least Future Connected's battle system's supposed to be different, but I haven't really seen
I don't know
much.
what's different about it. At least not yet.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All we know is that they are. I think they said that they are drastically changing it. Which honestly, this is the company that thought that changing up the battle system for Torna was a good idea. So I'm not surprised.
Honestly, the battle system of Torna was so good.
Oh, I love the battle system.
It was
Torna.
fun.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they announced so much stuff on their Twitter, like new outfits to earn in the new, basically, Land of Challenge-esque mode for Definitive Edition. So, it just seems like there's just enhancing, like, how you go about, like, searching out quests and, like, very, like, minor things, but it's overall seems like it's gonna really improve the experience. And at first I thought I was gonna just jump into Future Connected, but now I'm seriously thinking I'll probably just start the whole game over.
See, I want to do that. The only problem is that I know that spoilers are going to be all over the place with this one. And also, I really want to jump into Future Connected sooner rather than later for something else that I'm working on. So, yeah, I might have to just hop right into that just so I can get through that. Because I don't think it's going to be that long of a campaign. It's probably be like Torna's length. But, yeah, I want to get into
I still
that
don't
for
know
sure.
if I'm gonna jump directly on that or not, though. Because since it's like the following of it, I'm not sure if I should just replay the actual game or I'll see. I'll see how I feel when I boot the game.
I'm definitely restarting the game from the start, partially because I've been meaning to replay the game for a very long time, and partially because I have 120 page of quest notes, and they're just going to waste right now.
Oh my god.
Wow.
That is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Okay, so yeah, we just got through most of the news. We were just talking about the new features for the Definitive Edition. So Blue, are you going to, are you thinking about, or are you getting the Definitive Edition?
Yes, I already pre-ordered it.
Oh, nice.
Good.
So are you going to start from the very beginning, or are you going to jump right into Future?
Of course I'm going to start at the beginning.
Goo.
Okay.
I mean,
But it's
it'll make...
so long that I think I'm gonna start at the beginning myself as well.
Yeah, it's going to make Future Connected that much better, I think.
Yeah.
Same. Yeah, because I haven't really played through it, like, all the way through and since, like, the first time I played it on the Wii, and then I didn't finish it on the 3DS, so...
Yeah, I played it way back when it came out, but more recently I rewatched the cutscenes, so the story is still pretty fresh on my mind.
Gotcha.
I don't think it'll ever disappear from my mind. I lived and breathed them for like half a year one time.
Fair.
You're basically like us with like Xenosaga.
Yeah, that's yeah.
If I were to give a conservative estimate, I would say I have at least an hour of dialogue memorized, if not more.
I mean, it's a very memorable game. Like, some of those cutscenes have always stuck with me. I've said this before. Dunban's "I Will Not Cry" speech just hits home on such a personal level for me.
Okay, well, I guess we can kind of basically segues into the conversation.
Yeah.
Of
If there was any
basically
time to break in, it was this time.
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, we're just talking about how much we all love Xenoblade Chronicles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I don't know how we want to do this. If anybody wants to start off by like talking about their personal experience with the game or anything they.
I guess we could always let Owen start. I guess.
I mean, sure. So Xenoblade. I think I believe I was the one who recommended us doing this topic like a year ago. So yeah, I can go start. Xenoblades for me has always been it's the game that taught me that the games could be a story, really. I first experienced it. I've told this story before on the show, but I first experienced it through Chega Conroy in 2015, and then I found I found my copy at a random GameStop during a road trip, and from that point on to today, it's just constantly stuck in my mind as not only a great story, but also just great storytelling. The pacing is brilliant. Everything is awesome. I know that for me, whenever I think about why Xenoblade is so important, I think that this is the first time that Takahashi was ever able to complete his vision. Because, as we all know from his other projects, Xenogears and Xenosaga, he's very ambitious, and that's a very good thing, but he's not very good at finishing things through, mostly just because of how corporate structure works. And so for this one, it felt like he was really starting to learn how much you can put into it and how much you should save. So he focused more on telling an individual story that could possibly expand into a greater narrative, which later happened. Or if it was a commercial flop, then it would be completely fine as it was. And he's learned from that, and over time Xenoblade Chronicles X was a challenging development for him, and Xenoblade 2, I think he stepped away from the directorial position and became the creative lead, but wasn't directly involved in the directing process. But it's a game that is kind of a process for everyone to go through, because it was a learning experience to make for Monolith Soft to make. It was a learning experience for everyone who played it, that maybe you weren't playing Xenogears or Xenosaga, and maybe you've been a Nintendo guy all your life, and you've only played Baten Kaitos, if you were at all new about this random studio. And here's the studio that also makes modern Zelda games, said, what if we took the fanciness of the Master Sword or whatever and just combined it with what we already had, and that became Xenoblade. I'm not claiming that's what it is, but that's my headcanon.
Okay.
But yeah, it's true that whenever Xenoblade came by, it's true that it was a big change, and it was still they still have their very unique way of writing stories. That's it always has this touch that you can tell it's kind of them, kind of. But yeah, I'm just glad that they managed to do a comeback with this game. I think
100%.
I think it's the main thing that makes I'm so grateful to Xenoblade, because then it kind of made Monolith come back on the map, sorta, because they had been quiet for some time before that, and the US got it so late we had to fight to the death for it.
Yeah.
But yeah,
the good old campaign. I remember those days when they announced it for Japan and Europe was getting it, and Nintendo of America apparently didn't think that we wanted it, so they had no plans to release it here. And it sucks because they the excuse for it, I guess, was that a lot of people weren't playing Wii games by that point. Because for a lot of the Wii's lifespan, a ton of people overlooked many of its good games, and it's only now that people are really giving the Wii its due praise, because a lot of collectors are now getting onto the Wii and finding all these quote unquote hidden gems that they ignored for years. Yeah. Because I remember this, the Wii was out, and there were so many people I knew who refused to touch the Wii because it was the kiddie console. It didn't have HD. You didn't have your violent games on it. So a lot of people saw the Wii as a lesser product, and because of it, many of the games that came out for the system got completely ignored. A lot of people said the Wii had no good games, everything sucked on it, it was just shovelware, and that's not entirely true.
What? There was a bunch of good games on it. It's just they were kind of scattered, but I feel like the Wii was also a lot of an era that was kind of like not ignoring JRPGs, but I feel like they felt it would not profit, and so often a lot of RPGs or some like Japanese games like did not make it.
Let's be honest here.
Yeah.
The seventh generation of consoles was not the time of JRPGs.
I would argue it was not the time for Japanese games in general.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of companies, it seemed, around that time, it's not, I don't want to say that, like, they weren't putting out good games, because they were. There was definitely some gems during that era. It's just that I feel like they were kind of, they were kind of trying to figure out how to adapt their style to what was at the time appropriate modern tastes. And I think that, like, once they saw how Western games were flourishing during that era, they were trying to think to themselves, wow, we need to compete with this. So that's why they started designing certain games in the way they were, like FF13. They figured this might be something that would appeal to the Western market. Other companies were doing the same thing. There's a lot of games that either didn't even come out because they figured we just wouldn't like it, or maybe the stuff that they had before wasn't profitable anymore. So it was kind of like this weird period where they just weren't sure what to do. I mean, look at the Tales of series. It took them a while to bring some of those over. And then when they did bring over Vesperia, like, it didn't do very well on Xbox. I think it did okay. Like, some people bought it, considering, but, like, to this day, I still hear a lot of people say they completely missed it on the original, on Xbox 360.
Well, I mean, like, look at like the climate, right? I mean, this is the second generation the Xbox is in, which is the very first American game console since the Atari 2600 was dominant. Well, not first ever, but you know what I mean. Then you have things like Steam coming out, and then suddenly it become and then also the Japanese industry to that point had been very, like, focused on power and like graphical capabilities, chief of all Square Enix, and it kind of caught up with them, and then Nintendo kind of backed away, and then all the Japanese role-playing game companies, which is since, I mean, it's a little bit more popular now, but at the time it was an extremely niche genre outside of something like Pokemon.
Yeah, but I think they, like, actually, my friend just told me because he's listening, but yeah, I think also the Wii was also very focused on kids, and it's a good point to say, like, they were trying to reach out younger audience, and I think that kind of influenced a lot some of the games that came on it as well.
Well, I mean, I would agree with that, except for the fact that aside from things like Final Fantasy 13 and, like, some rare experiences, like rare things like Mistwalkers, like Lost Odyssey, for example, not really anything came out on PS3 either. I mean, we didn't, like, Persona 5 was supposed to come out, but that didn't happen for years and years and years.
Although Lost Odyssey happened more with the Xbox.
PS3 was, like, a little bit of a slow burn. The first few years especially didn't have too much. You had a couple smaller ones here and there, but later on, a lot of the niche companies stepped up. Like, you had a lot of NIS games coming out on PS3. There's a ton of those. I think Access Games also put out a few. Xseed started getting stuff out as well. I think it was just one of those weird times where, for a good amount of that generation, people felt like they weren't getting too much. And to their credit, a lot of the RPGs that were coming out weren't really getting great scores at all. And a lot of PSP games got really bad scores early on. Some of the Wii RPGs flew completely under the radar, like Opuna, for example, or Arc-Rise Fantasia. I know both of those games have their fans today. There's people I know who will even say, like, Arc-Rise is one of their favorite games ever, but both of those games completely flew under the radar when they came out.
But let's not. But, like, the reason why I think Xenoblade is so interesting in this discussion is that the good games never disappeared, because there was the DS and the PSP. Right. I mean, like you said, that a lot of PSP RPGs weren't particularly great, but I mean, like, there was things like Crisis Core, and then on the DS you had frickin' Atlas making Radiant Historia and Strange Journey and things like that. like the portable industry is like I one day I want to write a book about how the JRPG has evolved since the 1980s, and this is the era where it was predominantly all on portables.
Right.
And then Xenoblade comes out, and it, along with, I mean, like the Holy Trinity, it's kind of like a Holy Trinity of Last Story, Pandora's Tower, and Xenoblade Chronicles. Xenoblade specifically comes back and kind of shows people how to do console Japanese role-playing games in a era where things like Dark Souls are reigning supreme, and Western philosophy with Skyrim and Fallout are kind of the new popular games, because really, the JRPG used to be known for its story, and suddenly technology catches up with them, and the Western RPGs can tell just as good stories in different ways, and they become more popular.
Yeah,
so,
but I think it's also, like, for the longest time, a lot of the RPGs were mostly also turn-based, and I feel people were going more and more toward action games.
That's
so,
another
like, technology was raising as well.
So
I think for a while, like, RPG makers had a certain difficulty of, like, just finding the correct balance between, like,
they were struggling to find an audience
and, like, the story, and, like, they were struggling to understand the audience. Yeah.
Because you also have to realize that that generation, like Xbox 360, PS3, that brought a lot of new people into video games.
Mm-hmm.
Like, games before that generation, a game selling well was like 300,000, 500,000 units. Like, you'd hear those numbers, you'd be like, wow, that's a success. Oh my goodness. There weren't a lot of games that were, hitting million sellers. There was a few, sure. But once we got to that generation, people really started to jump into there. Like, the million started becoming 10 million, for example. There's a lot of people I know who their first real console was the Xbox 360. They might have had a GameCube, they might have had a PS2, but they didn't really care too much about it. RPGs weren't really on a lot of people's minds at the time. Even in the PS2 era, it was really just like that niche crowd, because that niche crowd was there from the 90s. So those are the people who are buying it. Well, once the
only people who bought PS2s bought it for the DVD player.
That's another thing. That's another conversation too. Yes. The DVD player was a big one, but what I'm trying to say is that the PS2 still had a big amount of that PS2 audience still was from the PS1 and the Super Nintendo, who liked the RPGs, liked those niche games. They were also buying PS2s. They were also buying those games. But once you got like Xbox 360 and PS3, that's when everybody else jumped in on it. And unfortunately, that everybody else, they're not all down with turn-based RPGs the way that we might be. And I think that made it kind of difficult for some companies to try and find that balance, trying to make sure that their games appeal to as big of an audience as possible. I think handhelds is kind of weird, because I feel like turn-based is a lot more accepted on handhelds than it is in consoles. There's people I know who refuse to play a turn-based RPG on console, believe it or not. A lot of people say that, oh, it's weird when I play it on a TV, but it makes sense when I play it in handheld. And I think that's that's not like an uncommon belief. And also multiplayer gaming, that was also on the rise during that generation too. RPGs are typically single player, at least that style, it tends to be single player. So there's a lot of factors that led into why it might have been more difficult to capture an audience during that particular generation. And I think that's why quite a few companies struggled a bit with it. Eventually, I think they understood their audience. They knew how to identify a niche and stick to that niche. And they were a little bit better about it since. But that generation was kind of weird for them.
It was the awkward period between the PS2 and the anime breakout in North America. Because anime kind of really got into America once, like around 2012-ish, 2013.
I would actually argue beforehand,
kind of like,
but sure.
I mean, that's really where it gets where it really starts to get big, where you start seeing a lot of like a lot of the design flaws. This is where you start seeing games become a lot more, for lack of a better word, anime.
Well, I think what that is Japanese developers finally able to achieve what they couldn't do back then. Because even if you look at older 90s Japanese games, they've always been trying to go for that anime aesthetic, right down to Ys Book 1 and 2 on the PC Engine CD that had anime cutscenes, that had voice acting. That was an aesthetic that they were essentially always working towards. And once it got to PS1, when that was doing well, like they were finally able to, they were given a platform where they could do that and they can really start to realize it. And now today we got consoles that are even stronger. They're able to just go all out. So like the anime aesthetic is no longer just character art or promotional art. It's actual game graphics now.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many aspects and factors into why that particular era was weird for RPGs. That can be its own podcast. Like you said, you want to write a book about it, and there's lots you can talk about in that book from just that one era alone. But it is interesting that Xenoblade came out, and I think Xenoblade is one of the most influential RPGs, just honestly in general, because you can look at a lot of modern RPGs. They all seem to kind of take a bit from Xenoblade. Like there was a great tweet a while back that showed Xenoblade, like its UI and its aesthetics, and then it compared it to other modern JRPGs, and they're just saying like it's crazy how all these games kind of owe quite a bit to Xenoblade, because like it did a lot of both things. You know, one of the big ones is that it doesn't have an overworld map in the traditional sense, right? Everything is a series of big interconnected areas, which you see in other games, like Tales of Berseria is basically like that. It's not, you don't have like a traditional world map like you used to in the older Tales. And that's just one example. I'm sure you could find other examples too. Xenoblade also incorporated the MMO style questing. It also has auto attacking, which... Yeah,
but I think I did, what I did like when I first started that game is how unique the system was. Like it was like a mix of different things, but it was working and it was pretty cool. And I like how over time as they made more games, like I like how they kind of kept that system, but like made it smoother and smoother and had more stuff to it. I think it's really fun.
Yeah,
it's really evolving.
I'm firmly in the belief that Monolith Soft is one of the top 10 studios in the game industry right now. Maybe not in purely kind of output, but in their purely development talent. There is that kind of divide that Xenoblade was kind of like. It was revolutionary. It kind of started this new era of kind of different kind of JRPGs. And the reason why Monolith is so good at consistently keeping it up is just because they've been in the game probably among the longest of anyone out there. At least comparable with other Japanese RPG companies when it comes to this particular style of game. And like they're obviously doing side help for Nintendo for their Zelda, Splatoon, and Animal Crossing titles, so they are consistently getting a lot of talent out of whatever they're doing. So it's just this kind of build up into this, for lack of a better word, monolith of a development company.
I think another thing that sets them apart is that they don't always throw away ideas; they build on them, and I think that's really good. Like. That's part of why I like playing the new Xenoblade games, because I love seeing an older idea, but I love seeing them build on that and make something new out of it. So it's cool to see that, like, they'll look at their old games, they'll look at what works and what doesn't work, and they'll try to see if they can make it work in a sequel. Even if it means having to do something a little bit different, but still keeping the style and feel of the previous one. Like Blade 2, for example. It still has the arts and the cooldown, but, they're mapped to a button. It's different, yes, but it still is in line with the spirit of what the previous games did.
Yeah, but also, like, even
it still feels like a Xenoblade
they
game.
tend to do that sort of thing where sometimes they'll put an idea aside, but then if they have a chance to use it later, they do. Like, Torn is a good example of that.
Torn is a great example of that.
Didn't they, kind of alter the system from 2 to Torna?
Yeah, they
expanded on it. They streamlined it, but you still auto attack. You still find the monsters on the field. You're still building the orbs. Like the basic fundamentals of Xenoblade 2's system is still there.
Yeah, they just basically improved the speed of it in a way, and like improved the combos and stuff. Like they did some improvement for the battles to be a bit more fast-paced, but overall, it's still more or less the same system.
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. It's like, it's not necessarily that they're keeping it the same. Do not misunderstand what I'm trying to say. I mean that they take it and they iterate on
Yes,
it. That's
exactly
what I'm getting at. Yeah, that's what makes it so cool to me. I love seeing when game companies do that. Like, one of my favorite game companies is Treasure, and they always iterate on their ideas. They'll make a game, and then they'll make a new game, and that takes that concept and turns it on its head. And I love seeing that. It's crazy to me to think that, like, Bleach Dark Souls on the DS comes from a beat 'em up that took its engine from a Yu Yu Hakusho game, for example. So, like, that's so cool.
Crazy.
Exactly. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I love seeing in video games. But, yeah, Monolith, to me, they do something similar. They always iterate on their ideas, and I think that's awesome.
I mean, if we're talking about, like, extreme iteration, Xenosaga Episode 1 has a lot of Xenogears-esque combat.
Absolutely. Actually, you know, I could have this exact conversation with Xenosaga, because for as much as I hate Xenosaga 2's battle system, I will give it credit where it deserves, in the sense that it was iterating on Xenosaga Episode 1's combat system. And technically, it is an improvement. On paper, it absolutely is. They tried to expand on it. I get what they were going for with it. Just unfortunately, it wasn't well balanced. Or at least wasn't balanced to my liking, rather.
It was well made, but the game itself wasn't designed around it.
Exactly.
So, we've covered, a lot of the combat, and specifically like the history of where Xenoblade shows up, because it very much is an anomaly for the era. Let's talk about the let's talk about the world and how expansive it is. Specifically, how crazily they were able to push the Wii to its limits. Because last night I was watching the Boundary Break episode for Xenoblade last night. If you guys know what that is, and basically in every environment they render so much. They render the entire Bionis and often the entire Mechonis in real time, along with the massive environments, which alone are just incredible to look at. And then everything is textured. It doesn't matter if it looks out of bounds. You can probably, if you could move the camera up there, everything is continuous. It's fascinating in terms of how they designed that world. Which, I mean, on paper it's very simple. It's just map the parts of the human body and turn them into maps, right? But it's just so much more than that because of the sheer amount of detail they put into it.
Yeah, that's one of the things that really got me when I first played the game. Because I honestly didn't quite know what to expect when I played Xenoblade 1 for the first time. I was excited for the game. I knew about it. I was following it. But, like, actually playing it, and, you know, obviously there's a title screen, which we've gushed about before and how great that is. And then you start the game, and you see... And then you finally get to, like, actually play it, and you see how big everything was. Like, think back to how you felt the first time you saw Gore Plains, for example. How freaking exciting was that?
I was like, whoa, this is huge.
Oh my goodness.
Like, what?
And this is why I like Xenoblade 1. At the time, I was going through a lot of really horrible stuff. I was struggling with school, a lot of some personal issues as well. But Xenoblade was coming out. I had a pre-order in, and that was kind of like my light at the end of whatever tunnel I was stuck in. And that was kind of like, all right, this game's going to come out. Hopefully I can get through this, and then that game can come out. But I was just going through so much stuff. And when I finally got Xenoblade and finally got to play it, it was just like, it was the break I needed at the time. Going to Gore Plains and being able to just run around just felt so liberating. And that's always stuck with me. Like seeing Gore Plains for the first time, seeing Sator Marsh change from day to night. It's like, that's all imagery that will never leave my mind. And just how I felt every time I heard that, how I felt the first time I heard You Will Know Our Names, just so much about that game was able to just bring out all these positive and all these cheerful and motivating, all this uplifting energy that I just didn't have at the time. And that was so cool.
Also the sense of wonder?
Yeah, wonder as well.
And the game knows exactly that's exactly what it wants you to feel, because if you look at it how the environments are paced, you have Colony 9, which is on paper a very big area, but restricted in terms of how you're either traveling the rim you're traveling within the crisscross. You're not like, you don't have a full open space. Then you go to Tephra Cave, which is a bunch of caves. And then you get on the Bionis Kneecap. And then you're going through these tiny cliffs. And then it opens up. And then from there, the game continually creates like bigger and bigger areas until it has a climax at Aerith Sea in terms of the pacing of the size. Which is the biggest area in the game. And just crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when it comes to what I love about one of the most interesting things I've noticed about the Xenoblade series is how it handles like dungeons, kind of, because Xenoblade 1 itself does not have dungeons in the traditional sense. Xenoblade X has a little bit of it, and Xenoblade 2 has a massive one that takes up most of the end of the game. But Xenoblade 1 doesn't really have any traditional dungeons. One could argue that Galahad Fortress might be a dungeon, or something like the Mechonis, like the Mechonis interior. But overall, I wouldn't that's not a broadly dungeon area. But the way the game makes up for that is it creates the feeling of exploration that you would have in a dungeon. Because in a normal RPG, there's like a world map, as we were talking about earlier, and from that you would have the only thing the world map is a way to get from point A to point B, and when you get to point B, that's when you go into the dungeon and do your exploring and get all their like rewards and stuff like that. But Xenoblade 1 instead makes the entire world that kind of design while making it still feel open. So it rewards you for exploration with secret areas. Side quests are everywhere, of course. The game shows you secret boss monsters, the unique monsters, if you go out of your way far enough. It treats you to treasure chests should you try and do the right side quests. The entire game is designed to be the open world of like a Final Fantasy VI or something like that, but at the same time having the level of complexity that a dungeon would have. And that kind of melding just works so well for it.
It absolutely does.
And it creates a feedback loop. That Monolith really refined here and brought to Nintendo, because I feel like a lot of people who play Breath of the Wild for the first time, that's a very mainstream game, and they're talking about like how the feedback loop is so good. Well, it's been refined over the last 5 years.
Exactly, that's what I tell my friends. Like, a lot of my friends, they don't play Xenoblade, but they did play Breath of the Wild, and one of the things that they often praise is the environment design and just the fact that they could just run around and find stuff. And I'm like, yeah, this is why you need to play Xenoblade. Xenoblade started that.
Yeah.
And it's so good. I love the way the environment encourages you to explore. A lot of people, for some reason, complain about that. They're like, oh, there's nothing for you to find. And I'm like, what game did you play? There's so much to find. And I love how they often foreshadow future quests. Like, you'll find an item that you don't need right away, but you will need it in the future, and then you get that little vision. Like, that's so cool to me. It always makes you excited to see what's going to happen next.
And actually, on that point, the game. So, like, maybe what they're maybe saying is that they're not getting any tangible rewards, because, like, in Breath of the Wild, you get shrine quests and stuff like that. But I'm suddenly reminded of the fact that Xenoblade has so many mechanics that, and specifically its engine. Oh, okay, there's a couple of things. There's 2 points to this. First of all, there's a ton of mechanics that incentivize exploration, mostly the ether crystal mining, but also the fact that every NPC in the game has a unique trading arsenal that you can trade with basically every NPC in the game, and their inventory changes depending on where they are in the world,
which is nuts. I remember that, and that whole NPC, the scheduling and the trading are 2 things that are both like really impressive and also incredibly nerve-wracking.
And a little frustrating.
But the other thing is the fact that the game often uses its vistas as a reward for exploration. Secret areas are all areas that are completely gorgeous from one way or another, whether it be a glowing moss cave or a gigantic outlook. And what's great is that the engine of the game is optimized in a way to kind of seamlessly create, de-res the landscapes in a way to make it look so rolling. And if you were just to jump off, then it would kind of transition into the live play in real time. And I think, specifically, a lot of people think the original release on the Wii looks dated. I would agree with that in terms of their textures, but the models themselves and everything that makes up that world is so actually beautiful.
Yeah.
Textures aside, that it, like, you eventually just start to get used to the textures and you start to see, like, how brilliant the tech used to animate everything is.
It's a damn good looking game, like, even for its time. Like, I remember I loved every second of it. Every area just captivated me. There's been many moments where I just put the controller down and stared at it because I was in awe. I just thought this was so cool. Like, yeah, there's technically better looking games on the market, even for 2012, but the fact that they were able to pull off what they did on the Wii, of all things, is just something so crazy and incredible.
Yeah, it was really crazy.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, I was just gonna add, because I mean, it's crazy, but also that the fact that there's, like, things can look different depending on the time of day. Like, I mean, Satoru Marsh is one, but it's just, yeah, it's a spectacle on multiple levels depending on various aspects of the game. That was pretty cool.
Yeah. Then and then, like, and everything in the game is built and even the game I feel like when playing the game, it has two missions. The first mission is this world idea, this idea of integrating this kind of overworld and dungeon exploration into a single thing and making a feedback loop that makes it satisfying to play, especially in a JRPG. And the second thing is to incorporate visions into everything. Because it really is. The game is designed around Shulk's vision, so gameplay, whether it be side quests or combat, everything is, and of course the story, everything is based around the idea of changing, adapting and changing, depending on what's going on.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that, though, because it was neat to see how the story impacted the gameplay, and I think Xenoblade 1 did that in a really, really great way.
Yeah. I think the only thing that was slightly... that would slightly feel a bit like it was too much for people that are completionists like me was, like, too many side quests. But it's mostly, like, the amount per, like, places, like, I would never continue the story because I was just always stuck in side quests.
Side quests were your concern? I guess you're just ignoring the achievements.
No. It's the contrary. I always wanted to go for all the shinies, and because of that, I actually never finished the game. I ended up watching the cutscenes while I was playing Xenoblade 2.
Dude, if you want, I can send you all 120 pages of notes that I have on the quests in the game.
God.
It's adapted from Chega Conroy's walkthrough. I basically watched that thing religiously and turned it into a side quest log that I could constantly look at. I have a friend who's I'm going to send them to anyway, so I need to find a way to PDF them. But if you want them, if you can read my 8th grade handwriting, take them.
Jeez, 8th grade. 8th grade was when I played Xenogears.
Oh yeah, I'm young. Hi.
Wow, I feel old.
Youngest person on the podcast.
But yeah, it was...
I guess it could help, but at the same time I would feel bad. If they're, like, handwritten, I would feel bad to make you, like, memorize 100-something pages. So, yeah.
That's so funny.
But yeah, it's overall, though, I think one of the big strengths of it, though, was really the story and the world and in general was just, like, the world in general was just so pretty, and, like, the story was so, like, I think it's one of the story that Monolith wrote of the games that I played anyways, that was the most, like, kind of all together and complete. Like, they really managed to actually make a story that was very stable with Xenoblade 1, and, like, I really like their other games that have, like, super complicated stories. Like, Like I'm a super huge fan of Xenosaga, which is a huge like rabbit hole. But like I did enjoy the fact that the story of Xenoblade 1 was holding together so well, and it was just like super smooth going. Like I really really like this story. And
The
also,
pacing definitely.
yeah,
yeah.
go ahead, the pacing, yeah.
Yeah. The pacing definitely handles the best out of any Monolith Soft game.
Yeah.
Honestly, it's the most conservative Monolith has ever gone with their story.
Yeah.
And for Monolith, that is overly ambitious for literally any other studio.
Yeah, it's a very that's a good way to put it. It's also one of the more consistent ones for sure. It doesn't quite reach like the highs of some of their other stuff, but it doesn't come anywhere close to reaching the lows.
Yeah, it's specifically how they. I would say that. I would definitely say things like Xenogears and Xenosaga are deeper in terms of their what kind of stuff that they choose to do.
Yeah,
but my only issue is that it's payoff without the setup.
Xenoblade, that's
and
my
I
issue
would
too.
There's a bit of this issue in Xenoblade Chronicles X as well, and I would even a little bit of Xenoblade 2, but that's less so. But Xenoblade 1 is one of the very few games I've ever played where it feels like the game is moving faster than I can predict.
Prediction fun.
The only other one I can think of is The World Ends With You. Like it's a game that you're never settled into place, right? You're always like, I don't know what's going to happen next. I feel like the game is withholding so much information from me, and it's ticking me off. But that's why you stay, because you want to see how it proceeds.
I like
and Xenoblade
that
2,
a lot, actually.
Yeah, no, I love it too. It's a mark of good storytelling. And like every other Monolith game, I mean, Xenoblade X went through major rewrites. Xenoblade 2, it does that a little bit, but it doesn't actually start to set things up until it's halfway through the game. Which is kind of a shame, because Xenoblade 1 sets it up from the very beginning. And then like Xenogears and Xenosaga, I mean, like they try to set things up, but just development schedules and way too large of a scope ended up kind of like, okay, we just need to get these points out of the way, and if we can do some kind of setup, we can. So I'm not bashing on Xenosaga or Xenogears. I love those games to death. But I think it's a trait of how strong Xenoblade's not necessarily story overall is, but it's storytelling.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to be honest, when I was first looking forward to Xenoblade, and when it was originally announced at E3 as Monado, Beginning of the World, I admit I was mostly looking forward to it because, like, oh yeah, Monolith Soft is back. I hope this is exactly like Xenosaga. And I played it, and then I was like, no, this is not exactly like Xenosaga, and that's not a bad thing. It took me a while to realize that wasn't a bad
Yeah,
thing.
it wasn't, but like I said earlier, they still have their sort of touch of like style of writing, sort of.
Oh yeah, there's like hints. I mean,
like they have a
but,
way
like,
of writing stories that like you can always, if you played their older games, you'll always feel a certain amount of nostalgia, or you'll see some small things or ideas that they'll reuse, and you'll just be like, they'll reuse it but like a different way, sort of, and like you'll be able to make the calls, sort of, and be like, oh, they reused that but they made it more this way, that's pretty cool and stuff. But it's just they have this sort of style of writing that I just really enjoy all the time, and I like how they kind of always try to do some types of like winks to their old stuff too. Like I think it's something that always like kind of hype me over, because I'm just like, okay, what's gonna be the little wink to something that I know. But
yeah, I mean, like every Xeno game's gonna have Gnostic and some Christianity references. Every Xeno game's gonna do some crazy thing with this idea of what the human condition. And I feel like Xenoblade, of all the Xeno games, including what came after, is easily the most subtle.
Yeah, it's a lot more subtle for sure.
Yes,
yeah.
I agree.
Xenoblade 2 is my favorite game of all time, but even I admit that game like struggles hard to make its point across in terms of its pacing and how it's explained. But Xenoblade 1, it does it in stride, and it knows exactly...
I think Xenoblade 2 was pretty okay with the pacing, personally, but...
That's a discussion for another issue.
Yeah.
That's an issue for another discussion. I love Xenoblade 2 to death, but... I love Xenoblade 2 to death, honestly, but it does have its issues that I am fully free to admit.
Yeah, like, I actually didn't mind Xenoblade 1 going for a more subtle route. I know a lot of people who hate Xenoblade 1 that's general and love Saga, that's generally one of the reasons why they wanted all the religious references and the psychological, references there too. But I played Xenoblade right after playing all of Xenosaga. Like, I had finished Xenosaga 3, I think, only a few months before I played Xenoblade, believe it or not. So, to have to go through all of Xenosaga and all that giant rabbit hole to Xenoblade, it was very relaxing, to say the least. So, I definitely welcomed it.
I will quote David on this. Xenosaga is a full-time job.
Yeah, it is. And like I said before, like, at the time, I was not really in a good place. So,
yeah.
Blade 1 was, like, the perfect game for me.
The perfect chill experience, relatively speaking.
Yeah, really. It really was.
Yeah.
And honestly,
I think what brought me into Xenoblade 1 was its air of mystery. Like, so we have these two giants fighting each other. They die, and then some races and communities spring up across their bodies, and then we have a kid who can see the future in short bursts. And like, what is this place? How does this power work? Like, it's like giants and foresight are things that kind of resonate with me, and I like how it drew me in without explaining too much in the marketing.
I won't deny that I was brought into Xenoblade. The reason why I stuck with it is because I was a major Bionicle fan in my childhood.
Same here.
And I saw, like, especially in the opening cutscene, I saw a lot of, like, parallels to how that story really kind of finishes off. I'm just like, okay, I want to see, like, gigantic gods are a good sign. Let's see where this goes.
Yeah. Honestly, like, I think that whole scene of, like, the two giant gods or robot-looking things, like, fighting each other, like, kind of stroking. Oh, that looks so cool and, like, mysterious at the same time to a lot of people, and I think a lot of people may have seen that and been like, yeah, I want to try this, I want to play this, where can I play this?
I mean, it stood out. A lot of people will cite that Blade 1 had a very unique setting. Even people who, like, dislike the game, I've seen them praise the setting. They say, wow, that was actually a pretty interesting setting.
Yeah. Two continents in the form of two giants. Like, bigger than Ultraman.
Yeah, and then you have, like, different colonies on there and all sorts of different races living on them.
Colonies, villages, empires.
Continuing, like,
the world building is actually a very interesting point to bring up, just because of how thorough it is.
Yeah.
Because another thing that you notice pretty quickly is that humans are not called humans in this game; they're called Homs. And I feel like for us nowadays, years later after playing it, it's almost second nature to us to call the humans of the Colony 9 specifically and Colony 6 the Homs. But at the time, it's like, you don't really think about that in fiction, right? Like, what do you call the average human? How do you would you still call it a human in this world? I know Xenoblade 2 doesn't do that. It calls everyone a human, regardless of if they're Indolline or whatever, which might be a part of its actual message. But in Xenoblade 1, they're Homs, and then there's the Nopon, and then there's the Hyentia, and then there's the Machina, and every one of these has different traits. Some of them live way longer than others. And so, because of that, the entire story is told from the perspective of the shortest living sentient species on this world, and you find out more stuff as you experience things that, like, from people who are vastly older than you until you get to the Machina, and things start clicking together.
Yeah.
You know, that's a really good point. I actually never even thought of that. Like, that the Homs is they have the shortest lifespan of everything else there, and the story is told from their perspective. That's actually incredibly interesting. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, it like one of the things I look at whenever I'm saying like, do I like the story is, it's the first step is take all the characters away and give me like a 5-minute elevator pitch about how the story works out without mentioning a single character. And the second thing you do is, from what perspective are you telling it from? And it feels intentionally chosen to choose the shortest lived species as like the driving force, because when you're coming back into the game, especially on a second playthrough, because the game is incredible on a second playthrough, you can't help but notice how naive you were the entire time, because you are put into those shoes, and you notice like, oh, I know where everything shook up. I know how this all started. I know how this all ends. But they're only speaking from their personal experience, which is an age span of 80 years. But then you have people like Egil, who are like 9,000 years old, or like however long.
Much longer than any living Hyentia.
Mm-hmm. Which in themselves are vastly older. They're like hundreds of years old. And frickin' even the Nopon are, I think they average around 150 for their max lifespan.
I don't fully remember, but yeah, they live a long time.
I think the one exception to that is the Nopon sage. Like, he's lived an insanely long time compared to the others.
Do we know that?
I remember seeing that on the affinity chart.
Well, I mean, all the Nopon live pretty long, so... let's see.
Age 9,999 years.
Oh, the Nopon Sage. That's what you're talking about. I thought you were talking about Chief Dunga.
Oh, no,
no, he's
not him.
Yeah, the Nopon Sage himself. He's almost mythical in his age. So he's designed to be he's designed to be almost like a legendary character, like the god of the Nopon.
Okay, but on that note, does Dunga have an age?
Not that I'm aware of. Well, he doesn't have an affinity chart entry. If he does have an age, it was done in extra material and not in the game itself. Okay, so I don't know what kind of topics you guys want to talk about. But one thing I do want to touch on, one last thing for me, is I want to talk about the mechanics that are specific to this game. So I'm speaking specifically about gem crafting. And we already talked about trading a little bit, but like gem crafting is a big one, as well as specifically how the arts palette works, and what else?
Visions?
I feel like there's something else I'm completely missing. Vision. I think we touched visions earlier. I'm sure it'll come up, but my point is, there's a lot of interesting things that they did to make the gameplay of this game more in depth. I mean, skill trees are a big one as well as the. I mean, gem crafting is in itself a fascinating mechanic that I myself have gone into. As I did fight. One of the things one of the things I like about the gem crafting system is how it forces you to moderate numbers, and what I mean by that is, when optimizing gems, you want to create cylinders specifically that are below 100, but as close to that as you possibly can.
Yeah.
And then from there, you're able to maximize your gem amount, because through that, I was able to make the most busted setup to take on the Avalanche Odyssey, including 100% topple resist gems, which is awesome. So, I don't know what you guys have to think about that. I know it's an incredibly confusing system for a lot of people, but yeah.
I think
it was a really neat system, though. I do appreciate the streamline gems and augment mechanics in the later games. It just made things a lot easier for me to get some really good gear.
I think for me, what I was focused most on for that part of the game was trying to figure out which combination of characters would work best for this situation. Mm-hmm. So, like, do I go with the person who can give me more gems, or do I go with the person who can help me get the most cylinders out of this specific cluster of crystals?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, And again, of course, that's entirely dependent on affinity, which this is still the only game in the series where affinity is between all the party members and not between two in Xenoblade Chronicles X, it's all centered around the protagonist, and then in Xenoblade 2, it's all centered around the blades. So, that
was one thing I actually did not like about Xenoblade 1, is because it was a real pain in the ass for me to have to manage my party and try to build affinities among each party member. And it was especially annoying for the heart-to-hearts, because oftentimes you'd find heart-to-hearts and you couldn't get to them till very late in the game, and I would always forget that they were even there, and then I'd have to grind up and make sure I have the right characters equipped. Like, I like how Xenoblade 2 did it better, where you just found a heart-to-heart and you could just do it as long as you happen to have it unlocked on their affinity chart. So it just made it a lot easier, a lot smoother for me. Yeah. And it's a shame because there's a lot of character development that's in the Xenoblade 1 heart-to-hearts. Some of them are actually really good. But, like...
Ricky.
Yeah, Ricky has a lot of good ones. Ryan has some really good ones, too. And it's like...
It's caterpillars, Ryan.
Yeah. It's a shame because, like, I'm sure a lot of people missed out on lines like the caterpillar one. A lot of people missed out on that, and it sucks.
That actually is interesting because I don't think any of them are like in a kind of storyline. Really, they're all pretty like self-contained little episodes between the two characters, and like the main purpose of it is to promote affinity building, right? And it makes you wonder, like, why on earth are there max level heart-to-hearts?
That's what I'm saying.
Obviously it's for character development, but
it's so stupid. Yeah.
Why do you need it to be max level? The gameplay mechanic of it is useless now.
I guess to reward
If I wanted to go grind affinity, I could go do the guy with the sleep counter spike.
See, that's the one thing that, like, I kind of hope they would tweak a bit, but I don't think they did.
It does look like a pretty one-to-one remake, aside from like visuals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course,
I feel like I said earlier, I feel like the battle system is more or less the same, but they may have smoothed a bit the pace of the battle. Like, I don't know, it felt slightly faster, but pretty much the same from the video I saw, anyways.
Well, the animation looks
I'm just
quite a bit
judging
smoother.
from a video there, so.
Since I actually think that the animation looks smoother, I think this will have a more consistent frame rate than the original Wii version.
Yeah, that's what I mean by smoother. Like, it looked like the whole pacing of the animation was smoother than what I remember.
The game does slow down a lot in Mechonis, but then again, that's kind of the fun because you can break the game in Mechonis. Side note, one of my favorite stories I like to tell people is when I was in Mechonis, I had Dunban use Demon Slayer on to finish off an enemy during a chain attack, and there were like 12 enemies in that, and that were aggroing on me, and all of them were knocked down, and I had Fiora in my party to use Magnum Charge to daze them all.
Cool.
And it was just if you can get that working in the remake, people, do it. It is the most satisfying thing. Just give Dunban Demon Slayer for, like, it's not a great art typically, but for groups of enemies it's very helpful, and you're going to probably have Magnum Charge anyway because that's one of Fiora's best arts for that part of the game. Well, are we going spoilers? I should probably mention that.
I think this
spoilers
place,
for the beginning.
Yeah, I think we're good with that.
We're good.
Yeah,
we're good.
Okay, I feel like I straight up just said, oh yeah, Fiora's Magnum Charge ability. But
it's alright.
It's
at this point, I think even Nintendo kind of spoiled themselves.
Yeah, they don't even care about that.
Back. They don't care.
And what's really funny about that was, like, when the game originally came out, the fan base tried so hard to hide that spoiler and to, like, not spoil. I remember we used to call her Seven.
Oh yeah.
For a very long time, if you went on forums, people would say, "Oh yeah, when you get 7, she's really good. They have these arts." And nowadays, Nintendo's just like, "Oh yeah, here's Mecha Fiora."
But that's how you know how good a game it is, when people are willing to come together and agree to do spoiler warnings like that, like hiding a new character's name or an old character's name behind a new name.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
you see that a
back
lot
on what
these days.
Owen was talking about, like one of my favorite things in just any Xenoblade game is when you set up an attack that's just a straight up like screen nuke. Like one of my favorite things to do in Xenoblade 2 is when I'm fighting Reeking Douglas. So Reeking Douglas has a move where he can call a whole bunch of other enemies, and he could fill up the screen. What you should do is do the Dark Orb Chain and seal reinforcements and then fight him. That's the smart way of fighting him. The fun way of fighting him, and the way I like to fight him, is to just let him call all the reinforcements he wants, continue building the orbs, just focus on him, and then in the chain attack, once you build up like your damage by a good like 800%, have Cosmos do X-Buster. And just watch the screen just fill with numbers. It's great.
My eyes are bleeding.
Yeah.
And then
so many,
and then the game
so
slows
many
down.
numbers on my like that.
But yeah, that's if you can do that kind of setup, please do. It's really fun. But Blade 1 had some really, really nice setups. Naked Dunban, anyone?
I never use that strategy. I hear it's good.
It's awesome.
I just prefer to grind up for the agility 6 gems.
Yeah, I never
I love
used that
Naked
either.
Dunban.
That just reminded me, they're adding one of my favorite things from Xenoblade X into the definitive edition, and that is fashion gear.
Oh yeah, fashion gear is gonna be cool.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes, I am so excited about that.
Yeah.
I don't have to make Ryan look ridiculous for the first half of the game.
Right? Yep. No, not
Right.
anymore.
Yeah, sometimes like some equipment you would get look like amazing, and some others look not so good, but you were like, well, I kind of have to equip this because otherwise I won't have any defense.
And then you get a
Especially
serious-
characters like Ryan who can equip heavy armor.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, the heavy armor, oh my god.
it looks like a walking tank. A walking, talking tank.
Until halfway through the game where you get Magnum Charge and you realize that you can just start damage spamming him. I actually am very excited for that because that makes oh my god, you can use early game the early game underwear to your advantage.
Oh my god.
The underwear is so good, but I hate using it.
Ugh.
Also, side note, I would like to acknowledge the fact that Xenoblade is correct in his assumption that glasses make everyone more powerful.
Yes. No shame in wearing
Yes,
glasses.
That is correct. Yes.
Everyone is Magane.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Everybody.
That was another thing that I loved about Xenoblade when I first played it. I loved how the outfits carried over into cutscenes.
Yes, yes.
Well, the entire game is actually that's really so that actually does two things. One, it's really cool because hey, outfits that no discontinuity. But the second nice thing is that if games are if like the cutscenes are rendered in engine, I think it's more efficient than it's more efficient on development costs than just to make everything pre-rendered. If you want a good example of how different something can be, look at Resident Evil 4. In the GameCube version, everything's rendered in engine, so anything that changes is the same. But then if you look at the PS2 version, everything is all the cutscenes are pre-rendered, and so there's a lot more of a disconnect there.
Yeah.
If I remember right, it's not just clothing that carries into cutscenes. Even time of day and people's attacks can change depending on what weapons you have equipped.
No. Well, everything, yes, except for that last
part.
Yeah,
I was going to say, I do not remember that.
The attacks don't change. I know this because Dunban has several
of the attacks, at least.
You mean like the trails?
Yeah. Like, I'm pretty sure that was on the website, too.
Define.
Like,
I think he means like when you're swinging a sword and like, you know how like...
When Melia had a certain attack, it was yellow, but for a different weapon, it was red.
Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
He means the attack trails, like when you're swinging and then you get that little trail. I think
that's what I meant.
Yeah, okay. Okay, yeah, that makes more sense. Because I'm like, because one of my, one thing I, on that topic, one thing that I don't like is, the is the battle against Mumkar in Sword Valley. It's the last battle, and when Dunban has a sword to his throat, and it's such an awesome moment. But Dunban's best weapon for that part of the game is like an axe weapon that has a rounded tip, so it's so much less intimidating.
Oh yeah,
because there's like an inch of space, and if you have like his proper katana, it's like right up to his throat. But if you have like his rounded axe like kind of weapon, it's like there's like an inch of space. That's something, all right.
Yeah, like if you're playing this for the first time, you just have him equipped with his glaive.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Yeah, the glaive.
You could
the
debate.
glaive he starts with.
You could debate the.
Sorry.
Yeah, I know. I did that. You could do that if you wanted.
Okay, sorry.
No, I was just saying, like, I would agree, except it's just the stats on that weapon are not particularly great for that point in the game. So.
Yeah, like you can swap it right after the battle, though, right?
Yes, you can. I'm just saying that, like, that might not. Well, I mean, I guess you don't have to use Dunban in that battle, but I mean, who wouldn't want to use Dunban in that battle?
It'd be cool if we could do fashion weapons, I guess. But that.
Oh yeah.
But probably not, I assume. But
I don't know. Like,
I guess we'll just have to see when we get the game.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like Xenoblade 1's, everyone has a one weapon class, and the reason why they couldn't do fashion weapons in Xenoblade X is because the protagonist could wield every single weapon.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Maybe I no promises. Of course, we'll know in a few short weeks, but that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
I had a thought and I lost it.
Oh no!
So who was everyone's favorite character to play as?
Shulk. Like hands down, Shulk.
I think I mostly played Shulk because, I mean, when you get used to playing the fruit tag, it's kind of hard to get to know, like, how the other characters work. But I do remember at some point I think for some more tricky battles, I did switch to Sharla sometimes just to, like, do the healing a bit more aggressively.
Keep everyone alive.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, that's a good strategy.
I know for me, I mean, Shulk is the best character in the game by far because the game is designed around the MMO trinity of DPS, support, and tank. Although support is less important, but Shulk can do both DPS and support at the same time because he has 16 arts constantly active, while everyone else only can have 8. So that's neat. But aside from Shulk, I would definitely say Dunban. I think Dunban is a really fun character to play.
I know a lot of people who play Dunban.
I think the way his arts are laid out in almost like, I mean, like, this is such a bad analogy, but like in fighting games, how people say there's combo trees where one thing sets up into the next thing, sets up into the next thing. That's basically Dunban's entire thing. It's like it's Gale Slash into Tempest. It's Gale Slash into his top. It's Gale Slash into Electric Gutbuster into his topple art, which I can't remember the name of, and then you can do something like his 2-hit attack that I can't remember the name of either. And then of course, Blossom Dance is the greatest thing ever, and it does 4 hits. So
yeah, I'm kind of glad you get him later, so that you have to train with Shulk and Rhine, like getting that status combo set up properly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like the game is very smart in teaching you how to do break and topple because it's the most important thing in the game.
Yeah, it is.
Especially against the Mechon.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, because that's the only way. The game basically forces you, like, if you do not know how to use the break and topple, you have to figure it out now, or else you are going to die.
Repeatedly.
Yep.
A lot.
Mm-hmm.
Same.
Yeah,
I'm trying to think what else.
That man was good. I like all the character playstyles. Like, I even played Melia for a good portion of the game because I don't know. I just find the whole nuke setup to just be really satisfying.
I think I had the most fun with Shulk either way, but at the same time, like I said, it's also because like you start as Shulk, so like you get used of like this character. It's kind of hard to break down and go to others and be like strong enough or like good enough to like make proper combos when you don't know the character necessarily. But Yeah.
Well, at the same time, the game probably is the best when it comes to incentivizing different party member usage.
Yeah.
Because in X, you have a protagonist, and basically you're trying to build up that protagonist to your own liking. So, and you don't want a very specific playstyle, and the AI is kind of not great with whatever playstyle you have in store. So you're probably going to be playing your protagonist most of the time, which honestly, that's what you should be doing anyway. That's the only mandatory party member in the game. And then, outside of story, I mean. And then Xenoblade 2, I mean, like, you can use other people than Rex, but, like, the AI is so good at managing, like, everyone else.
Yeah,
and
the AI was
Rex
pretty
is
good.
the most... Rex is, like, the best character. Like, he has 4 active blades, while the other people have 3. And, he is healing on the whim and everything. Like, there's no reason to turn off him. But Xenoblade 1, I mean, it's partially incentivized by Affinity, but also the fact that by boss design, especially around the halfway point, the 33% point where you're forced to fight a lot of Telethia, and you learn to use ether attacks with Melia and Ricky. Honestly, the character, I mean, everyone, okay, I don't like using Charla, but even I found Charla to have her uses.
Charla stopped being useful to me, like, towards the, like, second third of the game. She was okay at first because, okay, she can heal, but, like, after that, I kind of didn't really use her all that much.
Yeah, I think later on
I've heard that a lot.
swapped her out with other characters, because at that point, Shulk already had more skills to heal, so I was doing both attack and heals a lot with Shulk.
I feel like if I play the game, when I play the game again, I might be looking into Dunban more, because something I noticed about pretty much all the Xeno games is that agility is, like, the most busted stat in, like, the entire freaking game. Like, especially Xenoblade 2, it's like, stupid with Morag when you do her little agility build. I think I've showed you guys my agility build with Morag. It's nuts. I can, like, super bosses don't touch me. It's amazing. And it's like, I mean, yeah, I actually really like the Eva tanks. So I'll probably be playing as Dunban again.
I mean, agility was so busted in this game that they separated into two different stats in X and 3 different stats in 2. So, well, was it 3 or 2? I don't remember. So, I mean, if there's any time to use Dunban, it's an agility tank. It's this one. I do want to give Charlotte some credit, because there was one specific quest late in the game. To get one of the replica Monados, you need to kill a level 83 monster, and at this point, you're probably level 70-ish. And it's really dangerous, but it's not really like a special boss monster or anything. So what I did was I had Shulk on AI, and then I used Ricky to spam roly-poly to get it to force topple, and then Shulk would presumably daze it, and then Charlotte would headshot it, and it would kill it, and it would get me the drops I needed. So if you're, one thing I will give Charlotte credit for is that she's very useful when under-leveled. But if you're going through a normal playthrough with the normal amount of side questing, you probably don't need her too much.
I don't fully recall, like, at the point of the game I was at, like, who I was using fully, but I definitely most likely had Shulk and Dunban, and probably the third one was the one I was swapping depending on the situation.
Well, I think this next playthrough, I'm definitely going to try out Melia more, because I remember when I played originally, I was not very good at her, but after hearing...
Yeah, you gotta do some pretty specific stuff with her.
Yeah.
Just spam summon bolt.
No, but even before you do that, you gotta set that up properly, too. That's why the AI can't play her, because, like, there's some very specific stuff that you need to do. You have to summon the correct elements, then you gotta do the duplicate, and then you discharge with summon bolts. And I think, like, the AI just does not know what to do with any of the elements. So, like, if you have Melia on your team, do not have her on your team unless you're gonna actually play as her. It is fun, though. Like, if you learn how to play as Melia, she's actually pretty awesome, and I think she could even self-topple, too, if I remember correctly.
She does. She has Spear Break, which is a very specific brand of breaking where it doesn't actually inflict the break status, because Starlight Kick, it only works, like, after Spear Break.
Right.
And when you do Starlight Kick, it force topples on enemies that would be immune to break, but not immune to topple.
Yeah, she was really good. And I remember she was great for the super bosses, too. Because, like, you don't get that, what was it? I think Blade 1 had, like, this thing where, enemy agility would be ridiculous depending on, like, if there were 6 levels higher than you, like, their agility would just be way up. But, like, that didn't apply to magic.
Yeah, magic is 100% accurate.
So, like, melee was really good for super bosses. And I remember even back in the day, a lot of people who were trying to solo super bosses, they would use Melia.
I, low-key, did not use Melia in any of my super boss attempts. I feel like every year, roughly, I try and boot up my old Wii copy, and I try going into any of the super bosses with my old build, and I get absolutely destroyed because I'm not practiced in the game at all.
Yeah, I gotta practice too. Like, if I was to try to play some of the super bosses today, I would just get destroyed. Xenoblade 2, no. But Blade 1, yeah. I need to remember how to play that well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because even if it's similar systems, it's still, like, both are still very different and have their particular ways of, like, triggering combos.
There's a lot of nuances and quirks. Blade 2 is very fresh on my mind because I spent a lot of time playing that and optimizing in that, so I know what I'm doing with that. But Blade 1, it's been a hot minute, so
yeah,
I know when I play it, there's gonna be a bit of an adjustment period for me.
Yeah, I don't think I've played my Wii copy in a while, partly because I don't have the hardware to do it anymore. I still have my Wii. I just don't have a television to use it with.
Get an HDMI converter, it's very helpful.
Yeah, I did just get one. But I don't want to play the Wii in the kitchen, is the problem. And I'd rather not bring that kitchen TV to my room, so I'm possibly considering getting a TV for my bedroom.
I mean, you could always look if some people are selling older TV or something.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of people, if they buy a new TV, they're either going to sell the old one very cheap or just give it away. So, you never know.
Yeah, you never know.
But thankfully, the Definitive Edition is coming out soon.
And for that, I don't actually need a TV. I can just play it on the Switch screen.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
On the note of the Definitive Edition, I do think it's interesting that, I mean, okay, so obviously, this is the third release of Xenoblade, and I don't know. Okay, so I'm really excited for the Definitive Edition. I think it looks really good.
Mm-hmm.
It looks gorgeous.
Purely from but it does look gorgeous. I agree, but I feel like it's gonna be a hard adjust for people who've been looking at Xenoblade 1, the Wii version, for years and years.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say this is because when you start Xenoblade 1, it doesn't matter who you are going to be off-put by how the game looks, because the eyes are blurry, the textures aren't exactly the textures aren't exactly highest quality. It is a hard game to look at first. But over time, as you play more hours in it, and as you start looking at more vistas, it starts to, like, you start to get more comfortable with that style. And that in your eyes is what Xenoblade 1 is. The Xenoblade 1 is painterly, it is muddy, it is that. And here comes the Definitive Edition, which, for a normal player, this is going to be the version you're going to play first, and you're going to be just fine. But for veterans, it's going to be a hard adjustment again, because you've been used to looking at Xenoblade 1 models for 10 years now. It's been that long.
Personally, I am 100% fine with it. Maybe I just have an open mind. But, like, I saw the new visuals, and I'm like, this is amazing. I like that character's emotes. I get it. The Xenoblade 1 looked a certain way, but, like, I'm not somebody who's gonna be like, this is the only way it can look, anything else is wrong. No, that's stupid. I hate that mindset, to be honest.
Yeah,
I think it's counterproductive to do that.
To be honest, I really enjoy the new style because it's more colorful, they have more expression to them, like, their face is actually even more animated and stuff, and I'm just like, I'm all for that, because I feel like the scenes are gonna deliver even more, like, feelings and impact just from that alone. So
exactly.
Personally, like, I don't really care for the whole like every people that say, like, oh, the old style is, like, the only one that can be, but it's like the old style was this way because of the limitations.
Exactly. Like
It was
let's
not
stop pretending
what
like
they
it was.
wanted to transpire this early. It was what they could do with the technology at the time. So
Exactly. Let's stop pretending like this was something that they were deliberately trying to go for. They were deliberately trying to go for this. There were some real hardware limitations at play here.
not only that, but I feel like the new style they adopted, especially with Xenoblade 2, I feel like they kind of grew accustomed to it in the matter of like they can animate the faces so much better
Yeah.
and stuff, and it really delivers the scene so well. And
It's crazy because I've seen people say that they feel like the new game isn't as detailed, and I'm like, what?
I mean,
But
okay, let me
I
just put it this way. They did their best in 2010 and 2009 with the first version. They're doing their best with the definitive edition, too.
Yeah.
yeah, but that's the thing. They are pretty much reusing what they've learned from Xenoblade 2 and the way of animating, the way of doing the colors and everything.
Also,
And,
X.
The hardware,
Oh, yeah.
the hardware is much more powerful too. So it changes a lot of like what they can actually deliver, and of course they're going to use the highest thing they can deliver, which is their new style. So
And to be honest, I thought the original character models for the game were hideous, in my opinion.
That's
Yeah,
fair.
and you
That's
know what?
completely
I
fair.
think they look
It's
cool.
very
It's
fair.
kind of unique, but at the same time, like it felt a bit stiff.
Like
Especially
going,
when you compare it to Xenosaga Episode 3.
right, going from Xenosaga
yeah.
to Xenoblade was
I love Xenoblade 1, but I'm not even gonna pretend that I'm not even gonna say that it was an upgrade from Xenosaga 3. It wasn't. Xenosaga 3 was gorgeous. Like,
Xenosaga
to this
3 is
day,
so
it
sexy.
still looks fantastic. I had it on the
It's
other
an
night.
upgrade to Xenosaga 2. Xenosaga 2 is not a bad looking game.
It's not a bad looking game, actually. It's different,
It's just
but I
the
actually don't
in-game
mind it.
renders that have
Mhm.
problems.
But Xenosaga 3 looked
Yeah.
incredible, and then Blade, yeah, it didn't fare quite as well to me. It doesn't hold up as well either. Like, it's
Yeah.
impressive for what they did, don't get me wrong. Like, considering it's the Wii, considering how much they had on screen running at the same time and all rendering, it looks great when you think about it in that perspective. But when you take that and compare it to what's been released since, yeah, it doesn't hold up as well.
It's really interesting looking at specifically pre-release images and seeing how the character models changed,
Yeah.
because they actually, the way they textured the eyes before, they created eye sockets for it, and it was a little uncanny, sure, but I mean, it was pre-released, so they weren't refined.
Mhm.
I only assume that they changed what they did was either because they wanted to focus different parts of the body in terms of how they wanted things to move, or because the scope was getting too big that they had to reduce the triangle count. Both are equally viable reasons for why it was changed so much, but I'm a diehard fan of. I love the original look, and I know once the new version comes out, I'm gonna love it because 9 times out of 10, I think a game looks way better in person than it does in trailers.
I agree with that.
Xenoblade 2, for example, I was hyped as all hell for that, but even I was blown away by how good the game looked.
Yeah.
Because I've been watching all the trailers, and the trailers do not give the game justice. It is beautiful.
Mhm.
Yeah, but,
But,
it's also that monolith, every time they show a trailer, it's always kind of already outdated, and they always kind of, they pretty much add on to the graphics as they go. You would watch the first few trailers of, Xenoblade 2, and watch the last one, and you would see, how much they changed between the two. And even the last one, I think, between what we saw in the trailer and what we saw in the game, there was again extra stuff that had been
yeah, I mean, I think the only thing I can say about it is, Xenoblade for me, when I first saw the ending of this game when I was in 8th grade, it was the kind of profound, almost awakening type thing that people have whenever they finish a good piece of media and they're like, how do I process this? And I did have like this kind of stupor for a while of like, what do I do now? Because this is like, this was my life.
Yeah.
This was like my life.
I know
watching...
that feeling. That was my feeling at the end of Xenosaga 3.
I feel like everyone who plays a Xeno game is going to get that experience.
Yeah, at least
Yeah.
like we all connect
every-
with different ones, but I feel like we all have this one out of the series that really like shook us or something, and that really stick with us. Like it could be a different game for each person depending on their perspective and their what they live, what they feel. But like I feel like there's always at least one game that kind of like stuck with like the fan or something.
So yeah, like for me, it was Saga 3 until I played Xenoblade 1, and Xenoblade 1 was the game that like really struck a chord with me. And because of its environment, as we discussed, the gameplay, but the story, Shulk really reminded me of myself at the time, and both like his strengths and also his weaknesses. And going through that quest, I was going through a lot, and I was trying to essentially right a lot of the wrongs at the time, and just trying to better myself. And watching Shulk go through the story, it felt like I was going through on that journey with him. And by the end of Xenoblade 1, I felt like a much better person. Like I had a better idea of where I could take my life. And my life has been a lot better since then. So because of that, Xenoblade 1 has always stuck out to me, because Shulk's story, also Melia's story, was incredibly relatable in certain spots too. And both of those characters really stood out to me, and they've always been memorable. And there's lines in that game that have always stuck with me and helped me in hard or dark times. And the music has always been there to, be uplifting and keep me motivated. And that's why Xenoblade 1 is my favorite.
I miss Yoko Shimomura.
That
okay,
Yoko
I love
Shimomura's soundtrack in that game is just, oh my goodness.
I love Yasunori Mitsuda. I think he's a brilliant composer, and I think his music is absolutely brilliant. I love his stuff. But I would be lying if I didn't say that I preferred Xenoblade 1's music over anything that he composed from Xenoblade 2.
Nah.
It's tough for me. Like they're both up there for me.
But I think I'm more of a Mitsuda person, but at the same time, like I like both of the styles. Both are totally super good.
They're both great. I'm more of a Mitsuda person, but that's because of Chrono Trigger bias.
I think it's
Chrono
because
Chrono
of the
Cross,
bias
yeah.
that I grew up with his music, so...
I just personally think Shimomura does better with soulful music, which is kind of what Xenoblade 1 especially needed. Especially, well, for a lot of the cutscene music, frickin' Ace comes in and does all the battle music.
Oh man, I love that battle music though. It's so good.
Ace. Mm-hmm. Side note: I also miss. I also kind of miss the fact that Ace, quote unquote, Ace Plus isn't like composing Xenoblade games anymore. The Ace is like but Ace Plus is 3 composers, while Ace as a overall unit is 2. I believe 1 left when they were transitioning from Xenoblade 1 to 2 or something like that. I don't know exactly, but it's. I don't quite feel the loss, but I just think it's worth mentioning.
I never knew that.
Yeah, Ace Plus is composed of 3 composers. The Ace Plus listed in the soundtrack. But when they brought Ace back for Xenoblade 2, they only brought 2 of the composers back, I believe. So, people might want to double check on me on that, but I believe that's correct.
I was also a fan of several of Kenji Hiramatsu's tracks.
That music's also super good.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Hiramatsu's still around. He composed Torna.
Yeah, he did the battle theme and counterattack in the original.
He is Hiramatsu is such a good you can know what his style is almost immediately, because I have friends who were when the first trailer for Torna dropped and we were watching it live, he was screaming, "This is Hiramatsu! This is Hiramatsu! This is Hiramatsu!"
All right. Is there anybody have anything else to share about that we might have missed?
I think we covered a lot of things, maybe a bit in disorder, but I think we covered most of this stuff.
Well, I mean, this
there's
episode was really just for us to ramble on anyway.
Yeah.
To
Yeah, I
gush on
didn't know if
Xenoblade
anybody
one
had any, like,
definitive issues.
anything personal or anything else.
Following up on the whole Ace thing, I just looked it up. So yes, Ace is a duo. It's Tomori Kudo and Hiro Yamanaka, or Chico. Kenji Hiramatsu is the plus part, but the difference is that in Xenoblade Chronicles, the three of them work together as like a unit.
Oh, he works.
But in Xenoblade Chronicles 2, Hiramatsu did his own work,
Okay.
so they weren't like working together.
That's interesting, definitely.
So that is a kind of correction. I was kind of right, kind of wrong.
Yeah. Both.
That
It's-
works.
it's
We'll let it slide.
I gotta say though, I do love that there is like more than one musician or composer working on the games most of the time, and like also like even artist wise, like there's been so many artists that like provided art for like the Xenoblade series as a whole. That's just like it's so cool to see this many people come together and do stuff.
Monolith didn't even have.
What?
Monolith didn't have a dedicated art director until after Xenoblade 2 came out.
Yeah,
That's
I know,
right.
but
So,
even so, like I still find it cool that there's multiple artists involved. Like,
I love that about Xenoblade 2.
Yeah.
well,
Mhm.
I was just gonna ask: does anyone know who is behind the art design and or character designs in Definitive Edition, or have they said?
I might have a lead on that. Let me double check.
Because it doesn't. Because definitely not. So Saito was from Xenoblade 2.
Wasn't it someone
Yeah,
that
Psycho-
was on Xenoblade 2? Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like that. But it doesn't look like Kanehiko Tanaka's designs from
I'm
when
not
he
sure
designed.
who it is. I think
Yeah,
I did read something.
Yeah,
about
yeah. Tanaka was X and Xenoblade X and Xenoblade. And Xenosaga.
Mhm.
Who was this random freelance guy. I know that Tanaka does have his art in like the Minato secret files.
Oh, really?
I know that. I was quoted. I was responded to this morning by someone who corrected me. Claimed to source a piece of artwork that I'd been looking at for a very long time. It's like a painterly image of Shulk and Fiora that I'd always assumed was fan art because I didn't know who drew it.
Mhm.
But no, it was apparently Tanaka.
Oh, cool. Then that.
But let me look up.
Well, then that's
Sorry,
cool.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say then that's cool that for like when Shulk and Fiora popped up in Xenoblade 2 for the DLC, they were designed by Tanaka, so that was kind of
that was
cool. That harkened back to that.
That was
artwork.
her.
I'm looking.
It's
Oh, you're
alright.
fine.
Like any awkward silence when we did it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I remember, was it some? It was either some. I don't remember when that Takahashi said that there wasn't really a character designer for the original Xenoblade.
Yeah,
It's
wasn't
been
that in
a
an
bit of
interview?
time, but it's
it said
recently
that?
I think that they talked
Hmm.
about that.
So from this random game FAQ post that I just pulled up, the art design was done by Akinobu Yamakawa, Tadashiro Usuda, Kunihiko Tanaka, Yasuyuki Hone, Tony Waimenko Ku. Let's see, I'm reading further. Tanaka only did a special illustration. Let's see. And it says Tanaka, Hone, and Ku are not listed for character designs, so make it that way you want.
I remember Hone. He designed the Bionis and Mechonis.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, yeah, but didn't the wasn't the story? Well, the final designs wasn't the story that Takahashi built like a model, like a beta model of the Bionis and Mechonis and brought it into like a board meeting one time.
I'm pretty sure there was
Yeah,
a
I think
model.
I thought that
I
model
didn't know
was
he
made
put it
by.
brought it into a meeting.
I think that
I don't
model
think he brought
was
it to a
made
meeting.
by Hone though. I thought it was.
Was it? I don't remember. All I just remember is that was the genesis of the project.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yes.
I got nothing else. Does anyone else have anything?
Yeah, is anybody?
Nope.
Not really, but I guess we could always confirm that info another time, maybe when we have more information about character designers, because it feels like it's still a very blurry line still.
I mean, they have a character designer finally, and like they have an art director, and who's like full time now, so
yeah,
that's good.
Gods.
Like I love the art of Xenoblade 2, but but when it comes to looking at that, there's two ways of doing it. The one is you wanted a lot of different styles to represent the different like blades and all that, and the other part was the staff. It was extremely understaffed because everyone was working on Breath of the Wild.
Yeah.
So,
but honestly, I do like the fact that there was a lot of styles and multiple artists. Like it did something kind of unique in a way, and like the hard book is total candy. So I'm just
lemons in the lemonade.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's like it felt like a nice love letter to manga artists. And so that's why, like, whenever I got a rare blade, it was really exciting. Like, I would look them up, and I would look up the artist and look up all the stuff that they did. I thought that was awesome. I know a lot of people complain about it. They say, oh, it's inconsistent. But personally, I saw it as, hey, here's all these artists. Check out their work. So,
a collection of rabbit holes.
Yeah, we'll have...
I will...
Yeah.
I think I will be doing that when I replay Xenoblade 2, because I haven't mentioned
you should
on the
absolutely
podcast.
do that. It's a lot of fun whenever you get a rare blade. Just look up their art, look up other like stuff they've worked on. It's really cool.
Yeah, I haven't mentioned this on the podcast today, but I am planning on doing Xenoblade Definitive Edition, then going straight into Future Connected, then Xenoblade 2, then Torna.
Oh, nice.
I'm not doing X because the canonical placement of that is somewhere, and I have many theories, but that's not directly part of the story at this point. So
fair.
Yeah.
Well, wish you luck.
Yeah,
we'll have to have
I have a summer.
We'll have to have a Xenoblade 2 episode like this one, like we had today, and X.
Yeah, maybe another one about like we could have Xenoblade 2, but we could also have maybe another episode after playing like Xenoblade Definite Edition, like what are our thoughts on it and stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I wanted to do that, but I know people are gonna like. Some people are starting the game over, and some are starting with Future Connected, so it might be a bit before we...
Well, I mean, we could do it later on. It doesn't have to be right away.
Yeah, it could be just another ramble, but about the new version.
Because like I said, I'm doing Future Connected for a few reasons, but I do plan on doing a full playthrough of the normal game as well, because I just want to re-experience it.
Well, the game turns 10 years old in like 20 days. So,
oh my gosh!
Happy birthday, Xenoblade! I guess.
Yes, happy birthday!
Happy birthday!
It is crazy to think that it came out 10 years ago.
God.
Yeah.
And the 3DS port came out 5 years ago.
Yeah, it is so crazy to think about that. And you know what? Like, it's so cool to see so many people excited for the game too, because like this game that 10 years ago it seemed like a lot of people didn't really care for or didn't really know about, and now it's become more of a household name. Like, I could go down the street and I could tell people, hey, I'm gonna go play Xenoblade. They'll be like, oh yeah, I've heard of that game. How is it? Whereas even 4 years ago, if I did that and I was just like, yeah, I'm gonna go play Xenoblade this weekend, people would look at me funny and be like, what are you talking about? Go play Mario, bro. Like, you know, like, I love that Xenoblade is a lot more popular and more known than it ever has been, and I'm so happy that the first game helped so many people get into the series with the second game, and then other people will go back into Takahashi's other works and try out Xenosaga and Xenogears, and that's so cool to me.
The extra
Saga's gonna go up in price.
The extra
again.
Yeah. The extra push it had was also the fact that it went into Smash, and then I think it was sometime after that they did the 3DS release, if I'm not mistaken.
They did the 3DS release to prove that the new Nintendo 3DS was a viable and powerful console, to show that it was basically a mini Wii.
Yeah.
I mean,
but you know what's funny about that? Like, they never really advertised the 3DS version all that much. Anytime I ever saw the new 3DS advertised, it would show every game but Xenoblade. They'd show, like...
Majora's Mask was the thing.
But that wasn't even exclusive to it, which is what's funny about it. Like, they would show the new 3DS. It's like, oh, we got this powerful DS, but here's all these games you can play on the regular DS, which made no sense to me.
Yeah, it's so weird because it was like during the proof of concept phase they showed Xenoblade, but when it came to actually market the 3DS version, it's like they forgot about it.
Exactly. Like, I never once saw Xenoblade 3D on any poster for it. Like, if I walked into a GameStop and saw like posters for the new 3DS, I would never see Xenoblade on there. The only time I saw any kind of marketing for it was at Nintendo New York. Like, they had one kiosk for Xenoblade 3DS at the time. And I did see that, and that was when I got to try it out. But, like, outside of that, not really.
I think I saw
I have 2 pieces of advertising in my room. There's a Game Informer magazine from the time around the game came out. It had a 2-page spread. I remember that because I refused to cut it out. And that was really cool. And that is a 2-page spread of Xenoblade 3D. And then I have the cardboard stand sitting on my shelf right now where there's Shulk on it, and there's like Discover Shulk's origin through the...
Yeah, I know which one you're talking about.
Yeah. So I have... I mean, like, they exist. It's just Nintendo is not very good at it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is sad because they had a lot of, like, media prepared for it. Like, they made, like, 6 trailers. They re-recorded like 5 tracks for promotional purposes, which they put up on their YouTube channel, and I think a lot of that was the inspiration for why they chose to remaster the music in Definitive Edition, because it sounds really good, although they are missing a few instruments and they replaced it, but that's beside the point. But they just didn't use it. Like, they put them on the channel and like that was it.
Yeah, the way they marketed that game was just
honestly
baffling.
Xenoblade had it really rough. Xenoblade 1 had it really rough, like, as far as advertisement or releases goes. Like, even like when the 3DS version came around, like, I remember a few Wii copies also came by, and like nobody really knew about them. They just were kind of there.
Well, that's...
And cost $80.
Well, that's a whole other can of worms, because... And I remember this vividly, because I had the game when it came out originally. I even got the pre-order art book. I even have my old shipping label for my Wii version. I still kept that. So I had it. The game came out. GameStop's actually had quite a few copies of it because, you know, who's going to buy it that didn't pre-order it? They're just going to sit on store shelves.
GameStop
and then eventually,
is a whole other story that
and then eventually, like,
Xenoblade over.
Yeah, and then once, like, Chugga Conroy's playthrough came out, a lot more people started getting into it, and then eventually the Wii U came out that year. I think, was Chugga's in 2012?
Yeah, I think I was mixing things up.
Chugga Conroy started in 2014.
2014. Okay, so then before Chugga Conroy then. So the Wii U came out in 2012, and I think some people were looking for games to play on the Wii U, and then they heard Xenoblade Chronicles, like, oh, here's an RPG, maybe I'll play it. So I think, like, once the Wii U dropped, copies started disappearing a bit more, because I think people were just looking for games to play. And then the Chugga LP came out, that introduced the game to a lot more people. And I also remember, like, prices were starting to go up, even before 2014, prices were starting to go up. But what was weird was Nintendo had actually reprinted the game.
Yeah, that's what I was
what
mixing
happened
up. I thought it was a 3DS, but it was actually around the time, I think, of either Xenoblade
I believe they did it before
2.
3D. It was before.
I can't remember, but
I think it was actually before it.
There was a time, I think actually it was when I bought the Xenoblade X limited edition. Like, the guy behind the counter was like, "Do you want Xenoblade for the Wii?" I was just like, "You still have copies of that?" But no, thanks, I already have it.
So from what I remember, Nintendo actually did reprint the game, like, because there was a period where it was going for like $90 plus on eBay, but Nintendo actually reprinted it. But because it was a GameStop exclusive, what ended up happening was Nintendo sent those copies to GameStop, and GameStop started opening them and then marking them up as, like, I think they charged like $80 or something like that. They started selling new games as used so that they can mark up the price. They did it for that game. I believe they also did it for Metroid Prime Trilogy as well at the time. And I remember there was a YouTuber who actually put out this really this funny video just calling GameStop out on it. Because if you went on GameStop's website at the time, they suddenly started putting a lot more Xenoblade stuff on the Xenoblade, but they put all these extra assets on there. So she looked up Xenoblade Chronicles on GameStop at the time. What used to be just a normal GameStop page suddenly became like this big Xenoblade page with all this artwork and story synopsis. So, because they started promoting it more so that they could charge more money out of it. Yeah, they started doing that. And then another really weird thing that happened that I'm not even fully sure what the story about this is there's like this Arabic version of Xenoblade that's been floating around, apparently. That, like, I've seen it at GameStops. It's apparently an official version that's in English. And you could tell what it is because there's, like, an extra little sticker on the front cover. Oh, and have you seen that one?
I believe we talked about it during the Shulk episode. I think
we might have spoken about that. But yeah, then they had that print run. I have no idea what the story with that one is, but I've seen it pop up. I've seen it in GameStops out here, so it's apparently official. But I just don't know much about it.
Hikari, can you answer me a question for me real quick? You said you got your copy of. Did you get your copy of XE1 when you got XEX?
No, it's just at the time when I got Xenoblade X, the guy had received copy of the Wii version of Xenoblade 1, and he was hiding them in the counter because I was a fan of Xenoblade. It was like, do you want this? And I was just like,
gotcha.
I was just like, I already have it, but what you got copies?
I'm trying to right. Okay, so my current quest that I probably work on like once a year, is so my copy of Xenoblade 1 has the reverse cover. Like a lot of people have this version. It has a really beautiful piece of art.
Right.
But I know someone who has a copy of Xenoblade that they got from GameStop that doesn't have that, and I'm trying to figure out why that is.
That's probably the reprint.
Was it the? It might be the reprint. That's what I'm thinking, but I don't know for sure.
But no, the first my Xenoblade copy, I got it on day one. So
also, what you can do is take a look at the Wii case that it shipped in, because if I think the original print over the disc holder it says Wii, and then I think the second one it says Nintendo. So if that other one with that doesn't have the reversible cover, if that says Nintendo as well, that might just be a giveaway that it's a second print.
This one says I'm looking at my copy right now. It says Nintendo, but it has the reversible cover, so I have no idea.
I I got it backwards. I gotta go check my copy because I know I got that one at launch.
Yeah, I don't remember. I would have to check mine as well.
Yeah.
Then again, GameStop was selling them as used, so it's very possible that they could have swapped out the cases.
Yeah, GameStop opening the reprints and selling them as used. That's a dick move.
Yeah, there was a big video that was calling them out for Xenoblade specifically. I remember that too. Let's see if I can find it.
I'm gonna get my copy first. Hang on.
Yeah, I'm gonna go take a look at mine too in a second.
We're doing a whole let's look at our copies. Mine's a bit far, so I'll give up.
I have the UK version, so I can't check that.
Because if I went for mine, I would make a bunch of noise because I'd have to like open my video game thing that's at the other end of the room. So
I have to dismantle my.
Okay, so mine actually has Wii in the case, and I do have the reversible cover.
Yeah. Okay. I'm. The hunt continues, I guess. This is helpful, actually. I'm trying. If I ever solve this, I will let you know.
Yeah. But yeah, mine is definitely at launch. I even still have the shipping label to confirm that.
Yeah. All right. I'll take if I can get a looking at the actual physical copy, because mine was, I got my copy used. It was apparently a collector used to like collect Wii games and eventually sold it, so it was in very good condition. But they might have switched out the box.
I've got my copy open. What am I looking for exactly?
Above the disc, there's like an indent in the plastic that says Nintendo or Wii. What do you have? Okay, that's interesting. I have Nintendo, so I might. I don't know what that means because I have the reversible copy. Maybe.
So so that video that I was talking about from that YouTuber, that was in 2013. So that
Okay.
means that reprint happened before Smash Bros. Even.
Yeah.
So that means maybe there was more than one
Before-
print.
There
If there was one
absolutely
around
was.
Xenoblade X as well, because they received copies then. Like,
Yeah. So that's what's weird about this game, because I know a lot of people said that like it was super hard to find. It was a limited print.
it's hard to find.
They didn't
because
ship any copies.
Because GameStop were big pricks.
Yeah, basically they were hoarding copies of it. So there's definitely a lot more that exists. I believe, don't quote me on this, I believe the initial print run sold around 300,000 copies in North America. I saw that number somewhere. I don't know if that's fact. Owen, you can fact check me on that one. But
I'll do a Google search right now.
yeah, I think it's something
I
around
know it
that.
sold really well the first couple of weeks, but it had a very limited run though.
But yeah, and I believe that many of those sales were from pre-orders.
Yep.
Because
Yeah,
like,
because
I do
anyone that would
remember-
try to get the game after pre-orders would not be able
They'd be
to.
screwed.
Well, actually, for a while they were, because I remember up until the Wii U launch. Because I remember going over to other GameStops and specifically looking for Xenoblade, and I generally found it. I actually made my friend buy it one day. I was in GameStop with him.
Yeah, but I mean, I meant more like new after the release, like around in the year of the release, more so than later on. Like I know around my area, I would almost never see it.
Oh, so I guess maybe it's like just. I guess my area had a decent amount. Because I remember I would go to GameStops and I would always see them because I kept looking for them throughout the year just to see if it really was that limited, and I would see copies. It wasn't until like around the time the Wii U came out that they started disappearing.
Mm-hmm. That's a mystery for another day.
Yep.
Yeah.
I think at this
I guess
point,
we should
wrap
start
things
wrapping
up.
up. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. We've
Xenoblade is great. It's on literally everything. Post Wii, it's on Wii, new Nintendo 3DS, Wii U, and now it's coming on Switch. Buy
Yes,
the game.
please do buy the game.
Yeah.
and
Yeah, I hope that you guys play the game, and like, I hope you play it. I hope that the story captures you just as much as it did to me. It helped me get through a really rough time, and right now we are all in kind of a rough time.
Yes.
So I really hope that Xenoblade can hopefully give some of you, some sort of relief. 'Cause
Yeah.
Lord knows we all need it right now.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah, we do.
Oh yeah.
Okay. So I guess we can go around and kind of discuss if there's anything anybody wants to share that they're working on or social media or anything like that. Start with you, Justin.
So, yeah, secret project still underway. In fact, I had to actually do some more stuff to it, especially now that Definitive Edition's coming out. But I hope to be able to reveal that publicly soon, so that'd be cool.
Sweet.
But otherwise, not a whole lot else on my end.
All right.
I'm still plodding around. I'm still plodding along with my game. The demo is done technically in terms of the gameplay mechanics. I just need to draw the assets, and my friend's going to compose the music. Music's really good. I'm really excited for people to hear it. You can find me on Twitter at LegoDog2001. I'm not really on that too much these days, mostly because I've been trying to get away from Twitter and spend more time in Discord.
Nice.
But other than that, I mean, I'm still off. I'm constantly checking it. I'm gonna try and start writing things again soon. So I've been having writer's block for the past 2 years because I didn't know what I could say about Chrono Trigger that hasn't already been said, but I think I've found it. So, hopefully that'll come out before Xenoblade Definitive Edition comes out. And I also want to write something about why I love Xenoblade concisely in a paper form.
Nice.
When the Definitive Edition comes out. So watch my Twitter for that, I guess. Aside from that, I do fan art and I just give random opinions.
Nice. All right.
Sounds good.
Okay, how about you, Mary?
Well, con season's cancelled, so I'm at home playing video games. In fact, I finished Dragon Quest XI finally, and I started Fire Emblem finally, and yeah, I'm pretty much just playing video games. And I also played way too much Animal Crossing. I have over 250 hours, and I'm like, how?
It's because of the pandemic.
Ah, yes. I've
Yeah.
also been bitten by the crossing bug.
Oh boy.
Same.
But it goes by so quickly. Like you you go into the game every day doing little things, and then like sometime later you look at your gaming clock and you're just like, how did I play this much time? How did I invest this much time into this game? It can't be possible. I almost invested as much time as I did in Xenoblade 2. What?
To quote a certain movie, time flies when you're playing games.
Yeah. So,
Alright.
it's pretty much it.
Okay, how about you, Blue? What have you been up to?
Well, getting adjusted into a new job. And also playing Animal Crossing New Horizons for the past week.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why I'm doing this to myself, but I also got Fatal Frame 2 for the PlayStation 2.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That is a good game. I cannot play it alone, but it is a good game.
I just need a working memory card, my old one broke, and a working TV that I don't have to drag out of the kitchen. And I'll be all set. But I also have I know I didn't mention this the first time I came on this show, but I have an archive of our own profile where I post fanfiction. I did 2 things for Fire Emblem. One was a gift exchange with Tiki and Robin. And I'm also doing one for my Rob Cena thing. I only have one shot for that one, which is a little embarrassing. I need to get to the other 6.
Okay. Well, I can put a link to your archive in the show notes.
Yeah, I posted the link already.
Okay, but yeah, I'll put it in the show notes. All right. Well, I've returned to work, so not as much Animal Crossing, but I've still been playing Animal Crossing.
Indeed.
I had a big Xenosaga article come out for RPG Fan a few weeks ago. I'm kind of sort of proud of that. But that's about it that's going on with me. Okay. As far as the future goes, we did record a Cosmos episode, which may or may not be published before this one. I don't know. It just depends, because I'd like to have this episode out around the time that Xenoblade Definitive Edition comes out, but I can't make any promises. But since the Cosmos figure has been delayed to July, I might wait a little bit for the Cosmos episode to...
Looking forward to listening to it.
That works totally fine.
Yeah, the news will be a little out of date, but I can put a warning for that. But as far as anything else goes, I don't know what we're gonna be really doing in the foreseeable future, but yeah. But stay tuned. We XenoChat does have a Twitter account. That's kind of where we kind of put any updates or polls. So that's ZENO_chat. And then we also have an email, XenoChatPodcast@gmail.com, if anybody wants to throw us any questions or suggestions or any corrections for any mistakes we made during the episodes. Alright. Well, thanks again for everyone for joining us today. Thanks guys for staying so late to discuss how awesome Xenoblade is.
It's
and
okay.
Thank you for having me again.
No problem.
Yep.
Yeah, and thanks.
See ya.
Have a good night, everybody.
Bye.
Take care, everybody.
Now it's writing time!